want to start by telling you that I am not an anxious person. I have never been the kind of person who jumps at sounds or reads threat into ordinary things. I say that because what I am about to tell you is the kind of story that sounds like paranoia unless you know who is telling it. And I need you to know that I am grounded, I am careful, and I am certain. Her name was Callum. Not a girl named Callum. She went by it, said it was a family name, said it with the kind of casual confidence that made you not want to ask further. I had met her through a mutual friend at the start of my junior year. She was 21, I was 20, and she lived alone in a rented house about 12 minutes from campus. A real house. Garden out front, 2 floors, a kitchen that smelled like coffee, even when the coffee was cold. She had taste in the deliberate way that people who know they're being watched develop taste. Everything was selected, everything was placed. Where are you watching from, and are you watching alone? Subscribe and stay. She invited me over on a Thursday night in late November. Just us, she said. I want to cook for someone. She said it like a confession, something vulnerable. I liked that. I drove over with a bottle of wine I could not afford, and I told myself it was going to be a good night. And it was, for a while. She cooked well. She asked good questions. She listened in the complete, unhurried way that makes you feel like you are the most interesting person someone has encountered in a long time. We drank and talked until both of us were warm and loose, and the night had gone somewhere comfortable and unguarded. She asked if I wanted to stay over. She said the roads were dark and the wine was not worth the risk. She said she had a room made up already, which I thought was thoughtful and now think about very differently. I said yes. I put my coat over the back of a chair. I followed her upstairs. She showed me to a room at the far end of the hall, small, clean, a single bed with the covers already turned down, a glass of water on the nightstand, a towel folded at the foot of the mattress, the kind of preparation that takes time. I remember standing in the doorway and feeling warmly taken care of, and I remember now how much I wish I'd noticed it for what it actually was. I went to sleep quickly. The wine helped. The bed was good, and I remember the room being cold, the particular pleasant cold of a room with a window cracked just enough, and I pulled the covers up and I went under easily. I woke up at 3:10. Not gradually, not the slow, confused surfacing of normal waking. I was simply asleep, and then I was completely, sharply awake. The way you get when something has already happened before your mind caught it. I lay still. I kept my breathing even. I listened. The door was open. I was certain I had closed it. I am the kind of person who closes doors. It is not a habit I think about. It is something I simply do. The door was open by about a foot, and through the gap, the hallway was dark and completely silent. I watched the gap. Nothing moved. No sound. Just the dark and the quiet and the thin stripe of nothing where a closed door should have been. I told myself I had not properly latched it. I told myself it had swung open on its own. I pulled the covers higher and I closed my eyes, and I lay there for what felt like a long time without sleeping. And then I heard it. Not footsteps, not a voice. A sound so small I almost wrote it off immediately. The soft, specific creak of a floorboard just outside the door settling under weight. One creak, then stillness, then another slightly to the left of the first. Someone was standing in the hallway directly outside my room, shifting their weight. I did not move. I do not know how I managed that. Every part of me wanted to sit up, to call out, to reach for my phone. But something older than logic told me to be still, to give nothing away, to not let whatever was outside that door know I was awake. Then I lay there with my eyes open in the dark, and I listened to the weight shift 3 more times over the course of what I believe was about 4 minutes. And then it stopped. And then, slowly, the door moved. Not all the way open, not dramatically. It opened another few inches and held there. I was looking directly at the gap. Nothing came through it. No silhouette, no shape, no reaching hand. Just the door, wider than it had been, and the dark hallway beyond, and a silence so total it had its own texture. I picked up my phone from the nightstand. I did it so slowly I lost track of time doing it. I opened the flashlight and I pointed it at the door. The hallway was empty. I got up. I want to be honest about how frightened I was. My legs were not working correctly. And in that particular malfunction where fear has used up all the ordinary resources. I crossed the room. I looked into the hallway in both directions. Nothing. The door to Callum's room at the other end of the hall was closed. I went back to bed. I did not sleep. I lay there until gray light started coming through the curtain, and then I got up, dressed quietly, and went downstairs. Callum was already in the kitchen. She was standing at the counter with her back to me, and she turned when she heard me come in, and she smiled and said, "Good morning, how did you sleep?" Her hair was done, she was dressed. She'd been up for a while. "Yeah." I said, "I slept fine." She handed me coffee, and I sat at the table and I drank it, and I watched her, and I thought about the door. I left within the hour. I said I had an early seminar, and she hugged me at the door and told me to come back soon. On the drive home, I called the mutual friend who had introduced us. I told her a brief version of what had happened. She went quiet. I asked her what she knew about Callum. She said, "I thought you knew." I said, "Knew what?" She said Callum had a situation last year with a girl she was close to, a different kind of close. The girl had to change her number and move off campus. She said, "I assumed you knew and were just friends." I pulled over. I sat on the side of the road for a few minutes. I thought about the room made up in advance, the towel at the foot of the bed, the glass of water already poured, the door. When I got home, I checked my phone, and Callum had already messaged me. She said she had found something I had left behind. She wanted to know when I was free to come get it. I had not left anything behind. I had checked. I am careful about that. I did not respond. I blocked the number. 2 days later, a different number sent me a message. It said only, "You forgot your scarf." I had not been wearing a scarf. I blocked that number too. And I told myself it was done. I told myself I had gotten out clean. I told myself the story ended there. It almost did. Well, you would take 8 days later, I was walking home from a late lecture, taking the route I always take. And I passed the coffee shop on the corner of my street, the one I go to most mornings, the one I had never mentioned to Callum, never posted about online, never pointed to from a car window. I passed it and I glanced through the window, the way you do, the automatic sweep of a familiar place. Callum was inside. She was sitting at a table facing the door. Indeed, she was looking directly at me. She did not look surprised. She raised her coffee cup in a small, unhurried gesture, like a greeting, like we had arranged this. I did not stop walking. I have not gone back to that coffee shop. I have not walked that route since. I do not know how she knew where I lived. I do not know how long she had known. I do not know what she was doing outside my room that night or how many times she had done it before I woke up. What I know is this: she had a room prepared before I said yes. She knew which coffee shop I used before I ever told her. And she stood outside a door in the dark and listened to me sleep. And in the morning, she made me coffee and smiled and asked if I'd rested well. I think about that smile constantly. The completeness of it, the ease, the total absence of anything that looked like guilt. And there was that as the part that stays. Not the door, not the coffee shop, the smile. She smiled like someone who'd already decided how this was going to go. And I still do not know what she decided. I have never told this story in full. Not to my family, not to anyone who knew me during that year. I have told pieces of it, the pieces that sound like they have an explanation, because the full version makes people look at me differently, and I cannot afford that right now. I am going to tell the full version. I was 21. I had a friend named Desmond. We had been close since the second semester of sophomore year. The particular closeness that forms when you are both new to a city and learning how to be adults in it at the same time. He was easy to be around, quiet but not withdrawn. The kind of person who notices when your glass is empty before you do. We were not romantic. That always gets asked, and I want to clear it immediately. We were close in the way that two people who have been through a difficult year together become close, where you have seen each other cry and frightened and completely ordinary, and all of it feels safe. He had an apartment near the river. Ground floor, large windows, the kind of industrial layout that looks designed in photos and is actually just cold in winter. He had been in it for 4 months. His furniture was still sparse. It felt lived in but not yet settled, like he was still deciding if he was staying. He asked me to stay over one weekend in January when both of our other plans had fallen through. I had stayed there before. I had my usual spot on the sectional with a specific blanket he always set out without being asked. It was completely routine. It was one of the safest places I knew. We stayed up late watching something I can no longer remember. Sometime around 1 a.m, I fell asleep mid-conversation, which had happened before, and Desmond put the blanket over me and turned the television down and let me sleep. I know this because it is what he had always done, and because the television was still on, low, when everything happened. I woke up to light. Not the television, not the hallway lamp. A brighter, more directed light. The kind that comes from a screen held close to a face in a dark room. I opened my eyes by a fraction. Just enough to see through my lashes without letting whoever was there know I was awake. I had been doing this since childhood, that half-waking defensive trick, and it served me then in a way I am still grateful for. Desmond was standing 4 feet from the sectional. He was holding his phone horizontally with both hands, and the screen was facing me. He was recording me. I kept my breathing steady. I kept my eyes at that fraction. I watched him adjust his angle. Tilt the phone left, then right, then step 1 pace closer. He was doing it with the particular quiet of someone who has done something enough times to have learned the technique. The specific movements of not wanting to be caught. He stood there for what I believe was 6 minutes. I counted my breaths. I got to somewhere over 200. When he finally lowered the phone and turned and walked back toward his bedroom, I waited until I heard his door click shut, and then I sat up. My hands were shaking so badly, I could not unlock my own phone for almost a minute. I did not leave. That is the part people find hardest to understand. I did not get up and leave. I lay back down on that sectional with the blanket pulled up to my chin, and I thought about every moment I had spent in that apartment, and and I tried to calculate what I did not know. How many times? How long it had been going on? What he did with it afterward. In the morning, I was in the kitchen when he came out. He said good morning. He put the kettle on. He asked if I'd slept all right. I said I had. I watched his face. He was completely normal, the total, unreadable ease of someone who had processed what they had done and reabsorbed it into their ordinary self. No residue, no edge, nothing that would have told me anything if I'd not already known. I left after coffee. He hugged me at the door the way he always did, that specific friendly grip, and said we would do this again soon. I said, for sure. When I got home, I sat on my own floor for a long time, and then I picked up my phone and I looked up what my options were. I spent 3 hours on that. I read everything I could find. I talked to someone at a legal resource line at the university who was kind and careful, and ultimately told me that in the state I was in, the law was not likely to help me in the way I needed because I had been a guest, because there had been no distribution proven, because proving intent from a recording without context was a harder thing than it should be. I hung up and I sat with that. Wait, the gap between what had happened and what the law considered actionable. I did not contact Desmond again. I did not explain why. I sent him one message 3 weeks later, short and deliberately vague, that said I had a lot going on and needed space. He replied with a long message that was very warm and very concerned and offered help in 4 different specific ways. He seemed genuinely worried about me. That made it worse. The warmth, the realness of the concern, the complete absence of any indication that he understood what I had seen. Either he did not believe I had woken up, or he had so thoroughly separated his behavior from his self-image that the concern was entirely genuine. Both possibilities are horrible. I have never been able to decide which one is true. 6 months later, a mutual friend let something slip. She did not mean to. We were talking about something else, and she said, almost as an aside, that Desmond had been weird with another girl around the same time he had been weird with me. She used the word weird. I asked her what she meant. She paused in the way people pause when they realize they have said more than they intended. She said, just strange. She said she did not know the details. I did not push her. I already had enough. I have enough to know that whatever Desmond was doing, I was not the first version of it. I am in videos I've never seen, in a format I did not agree to, and they are somewhere. On a device or not on a device. Kept or deleted, I have no way to know. I have no mechanism to make that unknown go away. That is what he left me with. Not the night itself, not even the 6 minutes. The permanent, unresolvable knowledge that I exist somewhere I cannot see, in a state I cannot control, captured by someone I trusted completely, who poured me coffee in the morning and asked if I had slept all right. I still think about the way he asked it, the care in his voice, the way he was looking at me while he said it. He knew. He was looking at me and asking, and he knew. And his face gave away nothing at all. This is the one that matters most. This is the one I need to get exactly right. Because if I misrepresent any part of it, I will have done something irreparable to the only honest account that exists of what happened that night. Her name was Rowan. I want you to hold that. A real name, a real person, someone I had known for 2 years before any of this, someone who had sat beside me in lecture halls and driven me to appointments when I did not have a car, and listened to me cry over things that did not deserve tears. She was 22. I was the same. She had recently moved into a house with her boyfriend, and the boyfriend was away for the week visiting family, and she called me on a Tuesday and said the house was big and she did not like being in it alone. I said, of course. I packed a bag. I drove over. I have been in houses I did not know before. I have stayed in unfamiliar rooms, in unfamiliar layouts, and managed all of it with the ordinary adjustment that adults make. This house was different in a way I did not immediately identify. It was large in the vertical way that old houses are large, with narrow stairs and rooms that sat off-angle from each other, and a back hallway that ran along the whole west side of the ground floor like an afterthought. Rowan had made it comfortable. She had good things in it. It should have felt fine. I noticed that she checked the back door 3 times before we sat down. Each time she stood at the door and looked at the handle, and then looked at the dark yard through the glass, and then she locked it again. The 3rd time I asked her if she was expecting someone, she said no. She said it without turning around. She said, "This house just has a thing with that door." I asked what she meant. She said, "It sticks." She said it sometimes looks locked when it is not. I accepted that. I do not know why I accepted that. I think because she had said it like she was embarrassed by something mundane. Emma, and I didn't want to make her feel worse about a house she was still settling into. We ate. We watched something. We talked until late the way you do when you have not seen someone in a while, and there is too much to cover. At some point, exhausted and warm, and entirely unguarded, I fell asleep on the couch. Rowan went upstairs to bed. I remember her saying goodnight. I remember the lamp going off. I woke up because the room was wrong. I cannot describe it better than that. The room was wrong in the way that your body understands before your mind does. Some primitive calibration that reads the air and the sound and the quality of the dark and returns a verdict before you have asked the question. I was awake and the room was wrong, and I did not move. The back hallway. There was a sound from the back hallway. Not loud. Not a crash or a bang or anything that would wake a heavier sleeper. A sound like weight being redistributed on a floorboard. Like a foot being lifted and set down differently. Like someone who had been very still for a long time. Shifting because the stillness had become uncomfortable. I lay on the couch and I did not breathe correctly for what felt like a very long time. The sound came again. One slow transfer of weight, roughly 8 feet from where the hallway met the main room. I was looking in that direction. The hallway was dark. The main room was dark. The window above the couch let in a thin smear of outside light, enough to see shapes but not faces, enough to see the hallway entrance was empty. Whatever was making that sound was still inside the hallway, not at its edge. I reached for my phone. I had left it on the cushion beside me, which is something I started doing after a different incident, the one with Desmond. And that habit may have saved me something worse on this night. I picked it up without sitting up. I opened the camera and I angled it toward the hallway entrance with the night mode on. The screen showed me the room. It showed me the dark hallway entrance. And in the hallway, at the limit of what the camera could render in the dark, it showed me a shape. Vertical. The specific proportions of a standing person. Too still to be accidental and too deliberate to be furniture. Someone was standing in the back hallway of Rowan's house. I called Rowan's number. I know this sounds strange, calling someone who was 2 floors above me rather than screaming. But I couldn't make myself make noise in that room. I could not announce myself. calling felt safer. The phone rang twice and she answered in a half-asleep voice, and I said as quietly as I could form words, "Rowan, there is someone in your back hallway. I need you to stay in your room and call the police." Silence. Then she said, "What?" I said it again. I said, "Do not come downstairs. Call the police. Someone is standing in your back hallway right now." What she said next is the part of this story that I have returned to so many times I have worn grooves in it. She said, "How do you know it's not just the dark?" "Not, that's impossible." "Not, are you sure?" She said, "How do you know it's not just the dark?" The shape in the hallway did not move while I was on the phone with her. It stood exactly where it had been. I watched it on the camera with my hand shaking so badly the image kept tilting. I said, "Rowan, please call the police." I said it once more, and then I stopped talking and I held absolutely still. And I watched the camera screen and I waited. The shape moved, not toward me. It turned. It went back the way it came, deeper into the hallway, and I heard the back door. The door that Rowan had checked 3 times, open and close, in the specific soft way of someone who has practiced leaving quietly. Not a slam, a click, a controlled, deliberate closure. Whoever it was knew how to use that door. The police came. They found nothing in the yard. They found the back door unlocked. They took a report. Before they left, one of the officers said to Rowan quietly that it would be worth letting them know if she could think of anyone who might know the house layout. He said it in the careful way that police say things when they are trying to communicate something without committing to it. I heard him. I watched Rowan's face when he said it. She said, "I can't think of anyone." She did not look at me when she said it. We did not sleep again that night. We sat in her bedroom with the door locked and the overhead light on, and we talked about everything except what had just happened. She made tea. She asked about my courses. She spoke with the deliberate normality of someone working very hard to keep the shape of a regular night. Around 5 in the morning, I said, "Rowan, did you know who that was?" She looked at her tea. She did not look at me. She said, "I don't know what you mean." I said, "The officer asked if anyone knew the house." "You did not hesitate." She said, "I really can't think of anyone." Aunties, she said it to her tea. She said it in the flat, practiced voice of someone who has said a specific thing enough times that it has stopped feeling like a lie and started feeling like a position. I left at first light. I told her I needed to go home and sleep properly. She hugged me at the door, a real hug, the kind that has weight in it, and she said, "I'm so sorry this happened." Not, "I'm sorry you were scared." Not, "I'm sorry for the person who was in my house." She said, "I'm sorry this happened," like it was a weather event, like it was something that had arrived from outside either of our stories. It has been 7 months. Rowan and I have spoken twice since that night. Short exchanges, warm on the surface, nothing underneath. I do not know who was in that hallway. So I do not know how they got in, or whether the back door had been left unlocked for them, or whether Rowan knew they were coming and could not tell me, or whether she knew and chose not to, or whether I am constructing a pattern from a night she genuinely had no explanation for. I do not know. That is the thing that remains when the fear fades and the detail dulls, and all you are left with is the structure of a night. I do not know what Rowan knew. I do not know what the shape in the hallway was there to do. I do not know if it was watching me before I woke up, or if it came in after. I do not know how long it stood in that hallway while I slept 6 feet away in the dark. What I know is this: there was a shape in that house. It was vertical and deliberate, and it stood in the dark and listened to me breathe until I stopped being still. And the person who invited me there said to the police, I can't think of anyone. And then she made me tea and asked about my courses. I have stayed in other people's houses since. I have slept in unfamiliar rooms. I do my best to live without the kind of fear that turns every kind gesture into a threat. But I check the back door now. Every house I stay in. Every time. And I watch the way people lock things. I watch where their eyes go when they are doing it. I watch whether they look out into the yard with the expression of someone checking for safety or the expression of someone looking for a specific thing. Rowan looked for a specific thing. I just did not know that yet. I check every door now. Not because I think something is always out there, but because I know in a way that is settled and permanent in me, that sometimes you're already inside the worst night of your life, and the person across from you is pouring tea and asking how your courses are going, and the back door is unlocked, and nothing about the room looks wrong yet, and the shape is already there, in the hallway, waiting. It already knows the layout of the house, and so does she.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more stories.